Maria was a cleaning lady who worked in one of the tallest glass buildings in the city. Every evening when the sun went down and most workers left their desks, Maria arrived with her cart filled with supplies. She moved from one floor to another, wiping tables, emptying bins, and polishing glass doors. She was not the type of person people noticed. Her steps were quiet, her uniform plain, and her work often invisible. Yet she paid attention to everything around her more than anyone else. People walked past her without even looking, but Maria had sharp eyes and a mind that remembered details. She knew who always left half a sandwich in the trash, who spilled coffee every morning, and who worked late into the night. She noticed small things that others ignored because to her, these things spoke stories. She had always believed that if you watched closely, you could see truths that others failed to see. On the top floor of the building worked Mr. Thomas, the CEO of the company. His office was larger than most apartments and had a wide window that looked out over the city lights. Everyone admired him. He was wealthy, successful, and known for his clever decisions in business. People said he had everything a man could want. Yet Maria noticed something others did not. Success had also chained him to endless work, stress, and late hours. Often when Maria entered his office late at night to clean, Mr. Thomas would still be at his desk. Papers were spread across the surface, and his laptop glowed while he typed. His tie would be loose, and his forehead lined with worry. He always gave her a polite nod but never spoke much. Maria respected his silence, yet she quietly observed him. She saw things others failed to notice. One evening she entered his office while he was speaking on the phone. He was standing near his desk, his voice calm but a little strained. As he spoke, Maria saw his hand gripping the edge of the desk too tightly, as if he needed support. She also noticed how his face turned pale for a moment, and how his other hand brushed against his chest lightly. He smiled when his call ended, yet his smile seemed forced. Maria had seen something like this before. Many years ago, her neighbor, an old man, showed the same signs. At that time, Maria thought it was just fatigue, but weeks later the man collapsed in front of his home. The doctors had said it was a heart issue. That memory never left her, and now she felt the same worry rise inside her heart as she watched Mr. Thomas. She wondered if she should say something, but a voice inside stopped her. She was only a cleaning lady. Why would a millionaire CEO listen to her about his health? He had assistants, doctors, and friends, yet none of them seemed to notice what she just saw. People often looked at her as invisible, someone whose duty was only to wipe floors and empty bins. Still, Maria could not shake off the feeling. She whispered to herself in her mind, "Something is not right." The next night her worry grew stronger. When she came to the top floor again, she found Mr. Thomas working late as usual. His desk was covered with papers, and a cup of coffee stood half finished. She noticed his hand tremble slightly as he lifted the cup. He put it down quickly, almost spilling it. Then he leaned back in his chair and rubbed his temples as though fighting dizziness. He tried to hide it the moment he saw Maria entering with her mop, but she had already seen enough. Maria's heart beat faster. She felt like she was standing at a crossroads. She could stay quiet, just do her duty and leave, or she could risk speaking up. If she was wrong, maybe he would laugh or get angry. If she was right, then silence could be dangerous. She thought about her neighbor again and how no one noticed until it was too late. That memory gave her courage. Still she stayed silent for the night. She walked out of the office carrying her cart, but her mind was restless. The city lights shone outside the building, and cars moved below like streams of stars. She paused at the door, looking back at the tall glass tower. Inside that tower, a man who seemed strong and powerful might be facing a hidden danger that nobody cared to see. Maria whispered softly as if speaking to herself, "I must watch carefully. Something is wrong." That night at home she could not sleep. She lived in a small apartment in a quiet part of the city. As she sat by the window, she thought about her day. Her children had grown up and moved out, and she lived alone now. She wondered if fate had placed her in that building for a reason. Perhaps she was meant to see what others ignored. Perhaps she was meant to notice the signs before it was too late. Maria did not know how, but she felt certain. She promised herself that she would not let this go. She would keep her eyes on Mr. Thomas. She might be invisible to others, but her eyes were open, and her heart was awake. She did not yet realize that this quiet decision would soon change both of their lives in ways neither could imagine. The next day the office was full of life again. Workers rushed through the glass doors, carrying files, tapping on phones, and greeting each other. Laughter and chatter filled the lobby as people hurried to elevators. Maria moved quietly through the crowd with her cleaning cart. She was used to blending into the background while everyone else lived in their busy world, yet her mind was not at ease. She kept thinking of Mr. Thomas. She remembered the pale look on his face and the way his hand trembled. She told herself again that something was wrong. Nobody else seemed to notice. His assistants only spoke about meetings and reports. His managers worried about deadlines and profits. But no one looked closely at the man they all depended on. That evening, when the building grew silent again, Maria returned to the top floor. The city outside sparkled with lights, but inside his office the mood was heavy. Mr. Thomas sat with his tie undone, staring at his computer. His shoulders were slumped. He rubbed his chest for a second, then reached for a glass of water. Maria entered softly and began dusting the shelves. She did not speak, but she saw everything. After a while he stood up to stretch. His steps were slow, and when he bent to pick up a folder, he almost lost his balance. He caught himself against the desk quickly, pretending it was nothing. Maria turned her face so he would not see her concern, but her heart pounded. She remembered how her neighbor ignored his own warning signs until it was too late. She could not let history repeat itself. Maria wanted to speak, yet her lips stayed closed. She thought, if I tell him, he may laugh at me. I am only a cleaner. Still, her thoughts whispered louder inside, but if I say nothing, he may fall one day when no one is near to help. The next few days passed in the same way. Every evening Maria watched him grow weaker. His assistants left files piled on his desk, his phone rang with constant calls, and he pushed himself without pause. He looked like a man carrying a mountain on his shoulders. Sometimes when he thought no one was watching, he pressed his hand to his chest and closed his eyes for a moment, as though fighting a storm inside his body. One Friday night Maria found him sitting in silence. The office was dark except for the lamp on his desk. His face was pale, and sweat glistened on his forehead. He was breathing heavier than usual. Maria froze. She wanted to run forward and ask if he was all right, but before she could move, he straightened his back and forced a smile as if nothing was wrong. He nodded at her politely and told her she could finish her work. His voice sounded weaker, but he acted calm. Maria felt a knot in her chest. At home that night she could not rest. She walked around her small apartment, whispering to herself. Should I tell someone? Should I talk to him directly? What if he ignores me? What if he fires me? She looked out the window at the stars and thought of her promise. She had said she would watch carefully, and now she felt she had to act. Her heart told her this was not something to ignore. She thought about courage. Courage was not about strength or wealth. Courage was about doing the right thing even if you were small. The next Monday Maria made her choice. As she entered his office that evening, she took a deep breath. She placed her mop aside, stood straight, and looked at him. He was rubbing his chest again, his face strained. She spoke gently but firmly. Sir, I am sorry to disturb you, but I think you are not well. Please do not ignore this. You should see a doctor. For a moment silence filled the room. Mr. Thomas stared at her as if surprised that she had spoken more than a few words. He gave a short laugh and said it was only stress and long hours. But Maria shook her head. Her voice trembled yet her eyes stayed firm. Sir, I have seen this before. My neighbor had the same signs. Please listen to me. This is important. Her words seemed to reach him in a way no one else's had. He looked at her quietly, his expression softer now. For the first time he saw her not just as a cleaning lady but as a person who cared. After a pause, he nodded slowly. "Thank you, Maria," he said. "Maybe I will book a checkup soon." Maria felt relief, but she knew it was only a small step. She prayed silently that he would truly listen and not brush it aside. As she finished her cleaning, she looked back once more at him sitting under the lamplight. She thought, perhaps my voice can make a difference after all. What Maria did not know was that her small act of courage had set a chain of events in motion. The life of a powerful man and the quiet woman who cleaned his office were about to cross paths in ways that neither of them expected. The story of their lives was only beginning to unfold. The following week passed quickly. The office was alive with meetings, calls, and plans for a big project that the company was about to launch. Everyone admired Mr. Thomas for his focus and discipline. He never missed a meeting and never showed weakness in front of his team. To most people he looked like a strong leader, but Maria saw what others did not. She noticed his pale skin, the way he held his breath after climbing the stairs, and how often his hand went to his chest when he thought no one was looking. Maria had spoken to him once, but she was not sure he had taken her words seriously. He had smiled, thanked her, and promised to see a doctor, but he continued to stay late every night. Papers piled higher on his desk, his phone never stopped buzzing, and his shoulders carried a weight that seemed too heavy for one man. Maria kept watching, her worry growing deeper each day. One evening she entered his office and found him staring at the city lights through the tall window. His face was tired, and he did not notice her right away. She quietly placed her cleaning cart by the door and began wiping the table. After a moment he spoke in a low voice, almost as if talking to himself. "Do you know, Maria, people think success is freedom, but it is really another kind of chain. I cannot rest even for a single day. Everyone depends on me." Maria paused and looked at him. She wanted to remind him again about his health, but she could see he was already carrying too much on his mind. Still, she could not stay silent. "Sir, chains can be broken," she said softly. "But only if you take care of yourself first." He turned to her and gave a small smile. "Your words are kind, but do not worry. I am fine. It is just stress." His tone was gentle but dismissive, as if trying to close the topic. Maria bowed her head and returned to her work, but her heart was heavy. She could see the truth more clearly than ever. He was not fine. He was in danger, and he did not want to admit it. The next night her fears grew stronger. She found him coughing into his hand, his face red, his breath short. He quickly drank water and waved it away as nothing. But Maria knew it was not nothing. She whispered in her heart, if he keeps ignoring this, one day he may fall and nobody will be near to help. At home Maria prayed for guidance. She lived a quiet life, with simple meals and long evenings alone. Yet her thoughts were filled with Mr. Thomas. She remembered her old neighbor again and how no one listened until it was too late. That man had no one to warn him, but Mr. Thomas did. She promised herself she would not stop trying. The following morning brought a heavy rain. The city streets shone with water, and workers rushed inside to escape the storm. By the evening, the sky cleared, leaving the air fresh and cool. Maria returned to the top floor as usual, but what she saw made her heart freeze. Mr. Thomas was sitting at his desk, his hand pressed hard against his chest, his face twisted in pain. His skin was pale, and sweat rolled down his forehead. He tried to stand but staggered slightly before holding the edge of the table. Maria rushed forward without thinking. "Sir, please sit down. You need help." His lips tried to form words, but his voice was weak. "I am fine, just tired." He waved his hand as if to dismiss her concern, but his body told another story. His breathing was heavy, and his eyes looked unfocused. Maria's hands trembled, but her voice was steady. "No sir, this is not just tiredness. Please, I beg you, see a doctor. You cannot ignore this any longer. She spoke with all the strength in her heart. For a moment he looked at her, and his proud mask seemed to break. He saw the fear in her eyes and the truth in her words. Slowly, he nodded. Maybe you are right, Maria. Maybe I should see a doctor tomorrow. Relief washed over her, but she still worried. Tomorrow might be too late. Still, it was the first time he admitted his weakness, and that gave her hope. She helped him sit back in his chair and brought him water. She stayed near until his breathing calmed. When she finally left that night, she whispered to herself, I will not let him face this alone. The city outside sparkled with lights once more, but Maria felt something change inside her heart. She was no longer just a cleaning lady watching from the shadows. She had become the one voice brave enough to warn him. She knew the battle was not over yet. He still had to take real steps to save his health. Yet a door had opened, and for the first time, he had listened. What neither of them knew was that the days ahead would test them more than ever. Maria's courage had begun to pull Mr. Thomas away from danger, but fate had more challenges waiting for both of them. The story of the quiet cleaning lady and the powerful CEO was only beginning to reveal its deeper meaning. The next morning the city rose under bright sunshine. Cars rushed down the wide streets, and workers hurried toward their offices. Inside the tall glass tower, everyone prepared for another busy day. Meetings were arranged, calls were scheduled, and reports waited on desks. But in the middle of this routine, Maria carried a silent worry in her heart. She hoped Mr. Thomas would keep his promise and visit a doctor today. When she entered the building later in the evening, she felt nervous. She pushed her cart into the elevator and pressed the top floor button. Her hands trembled slightly as she thought, did he go to the doctor? Did he listen to me? The elevator doors opened, and she stepped out. The top floor was quieter than usual. She walked toward his office, her eyes searching for signs inside. Mr. Thomas was seated behind his desk, but something was different. Papers were piled neatly, and his laptop was closed. He looked at Maria with a calm but serious expression. For a moment she feared the worst, but then he spoke. Maria, you were right. I went to the doctor this morning. They ran tests, and the doctor said my heart is under great stress. If I continue like this, I could suffer something serious. Maria's chest tightened, but she felt relief at the same time. At least now he knew the truth. She walked closer and said softly, I am glad you listened. Now you can take care of yourself before it is too late. He nodded slowly. The doctor told me I must rest, change my lifestyle, and maybe even take time away from work. Can you imagine me resting while this company depends on me? He gave a short laugh, but his eyes showed worry. For the first time, Maria saw not the powerful CEO, but a man who was human, vulnerable, and afraid. That night they spoke more than ever before. He told her about the pressure he carried, how investors expected results, how employees depended on him for their jobs, and how he felt trapped in a cycle of endless work. Maria listened quietly, her heart full of compassion. She did not speak like a business advisor, but her words were simple and real. Sir, no company will survive if its leader falls. You must live first. Work can wait, but life cannot. Her words struck him. He leaned back in his chair and sighed deeply. For years people had praised his strength, his intelligence, his success. But no one had ever told him such simple truth. He realized Maria, the quiet cleaning lady, saw more clearly than all his advisors. The following days brought changes. Mr. Thomas began leaving the office earlier. He started drinking more water instead of endless coffee. He asked his assistant to reschedule some meetings and even allowed himself short breaks during the day. Many employees noticed the difference but did not understand the reason. They thought he was simply tired. Only Maria knew the full truth, and she kept it in her heart. Yet the journey was not easy. Some board members grew worried when he postponed a few plans. They whispered about delays and losses. But Mr. Thomas remembered Maria's words and held his ground. When pressure returned, he pressed his hand to his chest and reminded himself that his life came first. Maria's courage had planted a seed inside him, and slowly that seed grew. One evening Maria found him standing by the window, watching the sunset. The sky was painted orange and gold. He turned to her and said, "Maria, you saved me. If you had not spoken, I might have ignored the signs until it was too late." She felt shy at his words and shook her head. "I only said what I saw. Anyone could have noticed." But deep inside she knew most people had not noticed. Only she had cared enough to speak. That night Mr. Thomas shared something he had never told anyone. He said his own family lived far away, and he had been alone in the city for years. Success had filled his life, but it also made it empty in some ways. Maria listened, her heart softening even more. She realized that behind the powerful title and wealth, he was just another soul longing for care and understanding. When she returned home, Maria sat by her small window and thought about her life. She had always believed her work was invisible, that she was just a quiet figure in the background. But now she understood that even the smallest voice could change the course of another person's life. She smiled gently to herself and whispered, "Perhaps this is why I was here all along." The bond between them was growing. It was not the bond of power or wealth, but the bond of truth and kindness. Maria did not know what the future held, but she felt certain of one thing. This story was far from over, and the days ahead would bring more challenges, more choices, and perhaps even greater change for both of them. The following week felt different in the company. Employees noticed their CEO leaving earlier than usual and looking more thoughtful than before. Some whispered that he seemed tired, while others believed he was planning something big. Only Maria knew the real reason. Every evening when she entered his office, she found fewer papers scattered on the desk and more calm in his face. Yet she could still see worry hiding behind his eyes. Mr. Thomas had started to follow the doctor's advice. He cut down on endless late nights, and he even asked his driver to take him for short walks in the park before heading home. He tried to eat healthier meals and drink more water. For the first time in years, he was giving his body some rest. But rest did not erase the pressure from his company. The board of directors grew restless, and they demanded answers. One morning the board gathered in the large meeting room. Men and women in sharp suits filled the seats around the long table. Charts and numbers were projected on the wall, showing delays in the big project. Whispers filled the room before Mr. Thomas even entered. When he finally walked in, silence fell. He sat at the head of the table, his face calm but serious. One director cleared his throat. "Sir, we have noticed changes. Meetings are shorter, some deadlines are moved. Investors are asking questions. We fear the company may lose its momentum." Another director added, "We respect your leadership, but the market is fast. We cannot slow down now." The room filled with voices of concern and even frustration. Mr. Thomas listened quietly, his hands folded in front of him. A week ago he might have pushed himself harder to meet their demands, ignoring his pain. But now Maria's words echoed in his mind. Life comes first. He took a deep breath and spoke firmly. "Gentlemen and ladies, I understand your concerns. But no success is worth a broken life. I have made changes because my health requires it. If I collapse, the company will collapse too. We must find balance." The board members exchanged surprised looks. They had never heard him speak like this. For years he was known as a man who worked without rest, someone who never showed weakness. Now he spoke openly about health and balance. Some directors nodded slowly, understanding his point, while others frowned, thinking only of numbers and profits. The discussion grew tense, but Mr. Thomas stood his ground. That evening when Maria entered his office, she noticed his shoulders were heavy. He was staring at the city as if carrying the weight of every building. She began to dust quietly, but then asked softly, "A hard day, sir?" He turned to her and smiled faintly. Hard, yes, but different. I spoke to the board today. I told them about my health. They were shocked. Some may not like it, but I feel lighter for telling the truth. Maria nodded. Sometimes truth is heavy at first, but later it saves us. He looked at her thoughtfully. Do you know, Maria, before you spoke to me, I never thought about slowing down. I thought rest was weakness. Now I see that strength is knowing when to stop. Your courage gave me courage. Her heart warmed at his words. She never imagined that her simple warning could reach so far. She was only a cleaning lady, yet her voice had shaken the walls of the boardroom through him. She realized once again that no one was truly invisible. Every person could carry light if they dared to use it. Days passed, and the company adjusted. Some projects slowed, but new plans began to form. Employees felt less afraid to take small breaks when they saw their leader leaving on time. The culture of endless work began to soften, and whispers spread that perhaps the company was changing for the better. Maria watched these changes quietly as she moved through the halls with her cart. She never told anyone, but she felt proud inside. One night as she was leaving, Mr. Thomas called out to her. Maria, wait a moment. She turned and saw him holding a small notebook. He handed it to her with a smile. I have started writing my thoughts here. The doctor told me to reduce stress, and writing helps. I want you to read the first page. She opened it carefully. The first words written were simple but powerful. It said, I was blind to my own pain until someone with the simplest job showed me the greatest truth. That person saved my life. Maria's eyes filled with tears. She closed the notebook and handed it back. Sir, I only did what anyone with a heart should do. He shook his head gently. Not everyone would have spoken. Most people ignored it. But you cared enough to see me not as a boss, but as a man. That made all the difference. That night as Maria walked home, the city lights felt brighter than usual. She realized her journey was not only about saving his life, but also about teaching him something deeper. Power, wealth, and success meant little if health and humanity were lost. She felt stronger than ever, knowing her quiet courage had turned into a storm that shook the highest walls of the company. But Maria also knew that storms often return. The board was not fully convinced, and pressure from outside would not stop. She sensed that bigger challenges still waited ahead, and her role in the story was not finished yet. A few days later, the office was unusually quiet. Most employees had left early, leaving Mr. Thomas alone in his spacious office. The city outside glowed under the evening sun, but inside, tension filled the room. Maria entered as usual with her cleaning cart. She noticed immediately that he looked paler than before and his movements were slower. He tried to smile at her, but his eyes betrayed fatigue. Maria approached quietly. Sir, are you feeling all right? She waited as he rubbed his chest gently and nodded. I am fine, Maria, just tired. But Maria had learned to read beyond words. She knew this was more than ordinary tiredness. She remembered the doctor's warning and her own promise to watch him carefully. She could not ignore the signs. She decided to stay for a moment, moving her cart to the corner. I think you should sit, she said softly. You need rest. Mr. Thomas glanced at her, a mix of pride and hesitation in his expression. I cannot leave now, Maria. There is still so much to do. He sighed and leaned back, his hand on his chest. Maria's eyes met his. Sir, you cannot finish everything alone. Your life is more important than work. For a few minutes they sat in silence. The office felt heavy, as if the air itself carried worry. Maria noticed his breathing was uneven. She remembered the first time she had seen him falter and the fear that had rushed through her heart then. She knew the moment had come to act, no matter what. Suddenly, Mr. Thomas stood up too quickly. He grabbed the desk to steady himself but stumbled slightly. Maria rushed forward. Sir, please, sit down. You are in danger. He tried to shake it off, but his face turned paler and his breathing grew heavier. Maria could feel the panic rising inside her, but she remained calm. She helped him to his chair, supporting him carefully. The sound of the elevator alerted them to someone arriving. It was his assistant, rushing in with papers. Maria stepped aside firmly. "Please, do not panic," she turned to Mr. Thomas. "We need help now." The assistant looked confused, but when he saw the pale face and trembling hands of his boss, he quickly understood. He called an ambulance immediately. Within minutes, paramedics arrived. Maria guided them to Mr. Thomas and explained everything she had noticed in detail. The doctors listened carefully, checking his pulse and blood pressure. They told him he needed immediate treatment and warned that ignoring this could have had deadly consequences. Mr. Thomas looked at Maria with a mixture of awe and gratitude. He had always been strong, always in control, but now he realized that without her sharp eyes and quick action, he might not have made it. The ambulance ride to the hospital was tense but safe. Maria stayed with him, holding his hand as the city streets blurred past. Inside the hospital, he was examined thoroughly. The doctors confirmed that his heart had been under extreme stress. If he had waited even a few more days, the results could have been tragic. Maria listened quietly as the doctors explained the treatment and recovery plan, feeling a mix of relief and quiet pride. While Mr. Thomas rested, Maria reflected on everything that had happened. Her quiet observation, her willingness to speak, and her courage to act had saved a life. She never sought recognition, but this moment made her understand that even the smallest voice could make a powerful difference. She realized her life had changed as well. She had become someone who mattered, someone who could protect others with care and attention. Later, Mr. Thomas regained enough strength to speak to her. He held her hand gently. "Maria, you saved my life. I never realized how important it was to listen to someone who truly cares." He paused and smiled faintly. "From now on, I will never ignore the simple truths, no matter how small the person who speaks them may seem." Maria shook her head softly, feeling both humbled and proud. "I only did what anyone with a heart should do." Over the next few weeks, he followed the doctor's advice carefully. He rested more, ate healthier, and even took short walks outside the office. The company adjusted to his new pace, and employees noticed the positive changes. Some projects slowed slightly, but the overall morale improved. Maria continued her work quietly, moving through the halls and keeping a careful eye on him, but now there was a sense of peace in the office. Maria understood that life could change in an instant, and sometimes the people we least expect to act can become heroes. She realized that courage did not always come from wealth or position, but from observing, caring, and taking the right action when it mattered most. She smiled as she looked out the window at the city lights. This was more than a victory for one life, it was a reminder that every life had value and every person could make a difference. As she left the hospital with a light heart, she knew the days ahead would bring new challenges. But now she had confidence that with care, attention, and courage, even the hardest storms could be faced together. The quiet cleaning lady and the powerful CEO had both learned a lesson about life, health, and the strength of truth. Weeks passed since the day Maria had saved Mr. Thomas's life. The city moved as usual, but inside the tall glass building, a quiet transformation had taken place. Mr. Thomas was no longer the man who ignored his own health in the name of work. He took breaks, followed the doctor's advice, and even spoke openly about the importance of balance with his employees. His office, once a place of tension, now felt calmer and lighter. Maria continued her work as usual. She moved quietly through the floors, wiping tables, dusting shelves, and emptying bins. But something had changed within her. She no longer felt invisible. She had seen danger, acted with courage, and made a difference in a life that seemed untouchable. She realized that even small acts of care could create great changes. One evening, Mr. Thomas asked Maria to join him in his office after the building emptied. She hesitated for a moment, surprised, but followed politely. He was seated near the window, the city lights glowing behind him. For the first time, he spoke without the usual seriousness. "Maria, I want to thank you properly," he said. "You did more than your job. You saved my life and reminded me of what truly matters." Maria smiled softly. "Sir, I only did what anyone with a heart would do." He shook his head gently. "No, Maria. Most people would have ignored it. You saw what others could not see. You cared when it was not convenient, and you acted when it mattered most. You taught me the greatest lesson of all." Mr. Thomas handed her a small notebook. "This is for you," he said. "I want you to write your thoughts, your observations, or anything you wish to share. You have a unique way of seeing the world, and I want to honor that." Maria accepted the notebook, feeling a warmth spread through her heart. She had never expected recognition, but this gesture felt like more than praise. It was respect, understanding, and gratitude. Days turned into weeks, and life in the office continued with a new rhythm. Employees noticed the changes. They saw a CEO who smiled more, who encouraged rest, and who cared about well-being. Morale improved, and the company grew stronger not because of endless work, but because people felt valued and safe. Maria watched quietly from her place, knowing her small efforts had started a larger transformation. One afternoon, a group of new employees entered the building. Maria greeted them politely, showing them the hallways and cleaning routines. One of the young staff members paused and asked softly, "Maria, how do you notice so much? What makes you see things others do not?" She smiled gently. "I pay attention, I care, and I never assume someone else will see what is important. That is all." Meanwhile, Mr. Thomas had begun to take her advice to heart in all areas of life. He scheduled regular checkups, balanced work and rest, and even began spending time with friends and family he had long ignored. He often paused at his window, looking out at the city, thinking of Maria and her quiet courage. He realized that strength was not only in success and wealth, but also in listening, caring, and accepting help. One evening, as the sun set, Maria walked past his office. He waved her in, and they shared a quiet moment of conversation. They spoke about small things, about life outside the office, about moments that mattered. No titles, no power, just two human beings sharing understanding and trust. Maria realized that her life had changed too. She had found meaning in observation, courage in action, and a connection that transcended roles or status. As she left for home that night, she paused on the steps outside the building. The city lights reflected in her eyes, and she felt a deep sense of satisfaction. She had done something meaningful. She had acted with kindness and bravery. She had reminded a powerful man that life is fragile and that every moment counts. The story of her courage and his awakening would continue in small, quiet ways every day in the following months. Mr. Thomas never forgot Maria's role in his life. He often spoke about her example to his team, encouraging them to notice, care, and act with compassion. The office became a place where people supported each other, not just for business, but for the well-being of everyone. And Maria continued her work with quiet pride, knowing that her eyes, heart, and courage had made a difference that would last a lifetime. The city moved on, the building remained tall and glassy, and life went on for everyone inside. But Maria knew that sometimes, small acts of attention and care could change the course of history. A quiet cleaning lady had seen what others ignored, spoken when it mattered, and saved a life. And in doing so, she had reminded the world that courage, care, and attention could be found in the most unexpected places. Maria walked home under the starry sky, her heart light and strong. She had saved a life, inspired change, and discovered her own power to make a difference. And she knew that even the quietest voice could echo far beyond the walls of any building, reaching hearts that needed to hear the truth most.